All right, welcome to episode 32 of Distressed Deals Decoded, where real estate problems meet real solutions, brought to you by our friends at Asset Resolution Advisors. Today, we're going to dive deep into an issue, an emerging opportunity in real estate for real estate investors and real estate agents. Today, we're going to talk about the great short sale myth. Part number one. We have divided this one into two-part series because it is a juicy one. Okay. In this first episode, right, we're gonna go through several. We're gonna cover several topics. Topics going from perspective of the real estate agent. Okay. So for those that are just joining, we're going to cover the short sale myth, right? That short sales are not fire sales. I want everybody to understand that right at the beginning of this podcast, okay? There's a big myth in real estate that short sales means deep discount, and that sometimes is true, but the buyer should not circle short sales as a bargain hunter going out of business type of sales. This episode is going to show and dispose the myth, right? Where we can show you how short sales what they really are. And are there discounts? Yes. Is it a fire sale? Absolutely not. Understanding what a short sale actually is and what it isn't matters both for the distress, for owners deciding between options, and the buyer deciding whether they can spend the energy and the time on these type of particular deals. Steve, as my short sale extraordinaire, what is a short sale? How can we explain this to people? Because I feel that the market has such a misunderstanding of what it actually is.
Think you set it up right, Juan. This is not a fire sale. It's not a bargain. A short sale is simply a transaction where the property itself, the as is current condition of the property, sells for less than all the liens against the property. So the liens and loans and judgments and everything on the property exceeds the value of the property. That's it. That doesn't mean that because it's a short sale, the property is all of a sudden 20% less or 30% less or 40% less. It's not the fact. The property value is the property value. So from an agent's perspective, a real estate investor's perspective, I think the most important thing to understand is look at it like any other transaction. What's the current value of the property? And assessing what the market value of that property is. Because I'll tell you what, the mortgage servicer, the lender, they're going to look at it the exact same way. It's just the as is value. That is the key phrase in this entire thing. Okay. So the servicer is not going to slash their price out of desperation. They're going to look at this and say, hey, what can we get on an open market for this property? Right. They have several things on their side that they're looking at of why they need to do it. Right. You have to understand there's mortgage insurance. There's mortgage investors like FHA, VA, Freddie, Franny, private investors. There are all sorts of layers to what they're doing that they have to prove that they sold the property for the highest market value possible. It's not a fire sale. Otherwise, if they do that, they're not going to get their insurance proceeds. And what they're going to do is they're just going to foreclose, and then all the rules change for them a little bit because then they list the property and they're going to prove, oh, well, this is just what the property was worth. So again, a short sale strictly refers to the payoff of all the debt being short than what is total owed. That's it. All right.
Right.
Let me talk a little bit about the difference between short sales and foreclosures, and for real estate investors and for agents, right? A short sale can have a discount, just like any other deal, right? So usually the homeowner's a little bit more desperate to sell the house and get out of the debt and just resolve the issues. So they might be willing to give up a little bit of what the value is. And the mortgage servicer, the bank, might be willing to give up a little bit. What that little bit is usually anywhere from 3 to 10% discount off the market value. Really depends on what type of loan. Is it FHA? Is it VA? Is it Freddie, Fannie? what's the condition of the property, what's the condition of the market. All of those things have a factor, and each of them have their own guidelines and tolerances for what they'll accept and what they can accept. So, like some of the servicers have a little bit more leeway due to market conditions, while others don't care that the market is going down significantly. It is based on a certain set of guidelines. So that's something that for everybody to understand is that's really where the range is. Now, foreclosure. A foreclosure, by contrast, usually only brings 80 to 85% of the as is market value. So that's a 15 to 20% discount. And I actually just sent these guys, Juan and Patrick, an article the other day that almost said the exact same thing, and talked about this, right? So, yes, there's a bigger discount in foreclosure. And if that's really where your tolerance is as a buyer, as a real estate investor, or whoever, then you can go buy a foreclosure because that's where the discount's going to be. It's not what we would recommend and not how we would evaluate something. But at the end of the day, they're just two different transactions. The big gap, and this is what we're really going to dig into, has to do with all the factors: the lender, the homeowner, the neighborhood. Everybody loses more money in a foreclosure than a short sale. The short sale preserves the value, foreclosure destroys it. Again, foreclosure is a long time. They have to go through all the process, they have to get the property back, they have to go resell it. They need to get it off their books quickly. So, yes, they sell it at a discount. But on average, you're looking at 6, 8, 10 months down the road. The property's most likely worth a lot less 6 or 8 or 10 months down the road because there's so much deferred maintenance. So you're getting a better product, a better property in a short sale versus foreclosure, but there are vast differences between the two. So, Patrick,
Yes.
talk to us about, from a consumer side, the differences between the two, how homeowners look at it and what we should look from a real estate agent's perspective.
Yep. And it's funny, you said you sent that article around to Juan and me. I usually only like to look at the pictures. I don't read the articles, but I guess it's a different subject. Anyway, so you really nailed that, Steve. And I think one of the things that, this two-part exposing the myth of the great short sale for the investors, oftentimes you'll have that conversation with investors. We do Zoom meetings with them as we underwrite deals, and they're like, well, 10%, 3% off the value of the property, why would I want to buy that? And the answer to that is you wouldn't. So part of the underwriting is which ones to go after, which ones to not go after. That may not be your choice. But in tomorrow's segment or the next segment, part two, we're going to talk a little bit about how investors can still monetize on these things. And it can be significant over the course of several transactions. But so, Steve, you really nailed it. So now the thing is the consumer. We've already heard from our mortgage servicer extraordinaire, Steve Schiller, that short sales and foreclosures not only have two different parameters, if you will, for what the lender is willing to take, but they also fall under two completely different departments within the servicers and the banks that have two completely different sets of guidelines. So if you've ever been a person that has tracked a short sale that you had submitted and it got denied at, let's call it 300,000, and then 9 months later you see it sell at foreclosure auction for 280, it's exactly for the reason that Steve mentioned. It's over time. Now they've gone through the other options, the loan mod denied, the short sale denied, whatever, and now they go through foreclosure and it's a different animal. But what does this mean for the consumer? Because part of our big mission at Asset Resolution Advisors is to run a business that's profitable, that helps our clients, the investors, the real estate agents, also be successful and profitable. But at the end of the day, folks, there are people, homeowners that are getting rid of these homes that are in financial situations. And that is really an important aspect. So for the consumer, in fact, we're going to share with you a chart shortly here that if you would like to get a copy of that, type in foreclosure chart and we will send that to you. It's a very handy tool when you're speaking with consumers. But for the homeowner, short sale is a loss mitigation alternative. So when you hear the words loss mitigation at the servicer level, the bank, for lack of a better word, they have a department that typically kicks in after the homeowner or the borrower, as they're known, or the debtor, if they're in bankruptcy, goes delinquent on mortgage payments. And the bank's job is not only to go through collections and to try and get them to make those payments, but if they can't, or they say they can't, the bank is going to want to mitigate or reduce the loss that they're going to incur. So they're looking for solutions. That's where the short sale piece comes in. So, what are some of the differences? Well, there's always going to be a forgiveness of debt in a short sale or a foreclosure. Another big point that we talk about all the time, and people ask us, well, can you guarantee that the bank won't issue a 1099 for the forgiveness of debt, or that I won't get a tax consequence for the forgiveness of debt? And no, that can't be guaranteed. But for the most part, especially these days here in the 21st century, at the latter part of 2026, the banks typically don't go after these folks. It's a waste of time for the most part. And if they are going to go after them for a deficiency in a short sale, Steve always says it, they're going to do it in a foreclosure too. If that guideline is to go after that consumer. Now, we're not CPAs, we're not attorneys. Oftentimes, the bank will issue a 1099 for the forgiveness of debt simply as part of their short sale process. So, for the homeowner, when you're talking with them, don't freak out about that. It's just paperwork that goes along with the deal. So, credit getting dinged. Short sales have far less credit impact on the homeowner than the foreclosure does. As far as your time to become bankable again, the foreclosure, typically 7 years before you're eligible for a bank loan, stays on your credit report for up to 10 years. Short sales, you're looking at between 18 and 24 months to be bankable, assuming all other financial aspects are okay. So, as we talked about, there are going to be variances to what the better plan for the consumer is. As far as we're concerned at Asset Resolution Advisors, foreclosure is never the best option. I'm going to close this segment out by saying we've talked with a lot of attorneys that have represented the consumer, oftentimes bankruptcy attorneys, and no ill will towards the attorneys, but many times we've heard them say, I just tell my client, let the bank take it back. You don't need the headache. And that is just not great, sound advice. As the advocate for them, we should always have them look to sell that property. And from a business perspective, it creates revenue for the industry. Title companies get paid, the buyer's mortgage company gets paid, meaning the new buyer, unless they're a cash buyer, real estate professionals, everybody has an opportunity to earn money, and it doesn't come out of the consumer's pocket, which is the other thing that's really kind of interesting. So, we've got to keep sharing and educating everybody. So, Juan, back to you in the studio.
Yeah, if we can go ahead and share this comparison chart, it's going to help everyone to have the talking points, right? On whenever they're dealing with a homeowner or seller, uh, how to navigate through what is better for them, a short sale or a foreclosure. Like you said, here at Asset Resolution, we always push for or encourage the short sale versus the foreclosure just because of the sheer damage that foreclosure does in that type of situation for a homeowner. So Patrick, sale price versus market value.
Yep. So, and we're going to go through these round robin so that we don't bore you guys. But yeah, Steve covered that. So, sale price versus market value, right? The market value of a property, by definition, is what will it sell for in the open market today, based upon its as is condition and comparable sales. Those are the things that the appraisers look at. As far as the short sale, usually a little bit of a haircut is available between 3 and 10% off the as is value. We could probably spend an entire podcast on this topic, though, because it depends on a number of factors. It depends on the level of physical maintenance required, the deferred maintenance. Sometimes the more physical deferred maintenance that is there, the better the opportunity is, because the bank will understand that, depending on who the bank is. So FHA, VA have certain guidelines. They are only allowed to take a certain haircut based on allowable items that need to be replaced and repaired. Fannie and Freddie, a little bit more liberal, and in some cases, the private investor can make whatever decisions that they want. When the property does go to foreclosure, that's where you can see your 80 to 85% of market value. So the bank will take that 15 to 20% loss. I will tell you, in closing this piece out, even in bankruptcy, when a federal trustee has to earn what is known as a carve out, and we deal with these in short sales as well, the bank still makes out better in the short sale than they do with a foreclosure. So
Mhm.
they don't want to foreclose. That is another myth that we hear all the time. The bank just wants to. No, they don't. The bank wants to just get the heck out of this thing with the best recovery that they can.
All right, Steve,
All right.
control the process, my friend.
Yeah, so this is a big one, and I think a lot of agents don't talk about it. And I'm not sure that everybody quite fully understands the entire process to this. And I think it's a really important piece of the humanity of short sales, right? It's
Mhm.
one of the things that was brought up when I started in this industry years ago of trying to help people, right? Is in a short sale, the owner stays in control. So they're listing with an agent, they're marketing their home, they're negotiating their sale, their offers. And when they leave, it is them leaving the house because they sold the house. There's a very big psychological effect to that, that the homeowner is leaving their house because they sold the property. When you think about that psychologically, is no different than, was it a short sale? Was it not a short sale? Nobody ever knows when you put that sign in your house and you're leaving. You don't ask your neighbor, "Oh, are you short selling your house?" You're just like, "Oh, you're moving." Right?
Mhm.
That's a much bigger difference than when the county sheriff or the police or whoever show up in the front of your house and kick you out because you got foreclosed and they're evicting you. It's a much different psychological presence to the homeowner. And as we'll talk about here as we go down, when you sell your house, you sell it at the value you want to. When the bank sells it, they're just getting rid of it, right? We talked about the difference between the fire sale. That money counts. That money means something. We'll talk about it here in a second.
Very good. I'll take on the how the exits happen. So what's beautiful about the short sale side of things is that's actually an ordinary sale. It's negotiating closings that look like a normal sale, like you mentioned. Things are not chaotic like they are in foreclosure, where someone feels like they're getting repossessed, right, or they're getting kicked out of their home. It's actually a standard sale negotiated at the title company with the servicer, an agreed approved amount with a buyer and a seller. The homeowner gets to leave the home with dignity, right? That's the big difference here on the short sale versus foreclosure. Like you mentioned, no one is asking whether this house is being sold as a short sale or as a foreclosure, right? Like that's or a normal sale for that matter. So on the short sale side of things, it's going to look normal closing. On the other side, foreclosure, that gets a little nasty, right? Because now you have attorneys involved. You're getting sued. This is public now information. It is being documented. There's a public auction. You probably will have, I don't know, 100 investors calling you, asking you what kind of trouble you're in and how they can save you from, losing your property while offering you pennies on the dollar, right? Obviously, seizure of your property, never fun. In most cases, you're going to have an evictions. You're going to have the sheriff's department knock on your door. How embarrassing can that be? They will have a property preservation company that can go ahead and remove your items from your house. And that can end up in the front yard. Do you imagine a homeowner having to bear that moment of having to explain to the neighbors why all their stuff is in front of the yard? Not a good look whatsoever. So, from the human standpoint, short sale on an exit, short sale all the way, guys. Short sale all the way.
Yep.
Patrick, forgiveness of debt. I know you
Yep.
covered a little
And
bit
and to
about that, but
piggyback,
let's go.
sure, to piggyback on what you said as well, it's very interesting is there are two things that came to my mind when we talked about that last piece. And one of them is you can sell on your own terms as a seller. And by the way, when we say it's a normal transaction, it's a normal short sale transaction. So as you guys know, there's a lot of stuff in the middle that happens between
Mhm.
I'm selling and closing, but it is a normal transaction. But one question that we often hear from real estate professionals, whether it's an investor or an agent, I talk to the homeowner about a short sale and they ask me, where will I go if I sell my house? Well, based on that last exit discussion, same question. Where will you go if the bank comes out and kicks you out of your house? At least on your terms, you can start the process mentally and not stress out. By the way, folks, there is a lot of psychological damage that goes on in foreclosure. Families suffer from the stress of everything that goes on with the foreclosure, the kids,
Mhm.
everybody. So, it's incumbent upon us to help these folks through the process logically. But we talked about the forgiveness of debt. And the good news is, sellers have two options when they owe more than the property's worth. They can come to closing with money and pay that overage. And I've known many people that have over the years. And there are those that just don't have the money or don't want to lay out that much in some cases. I mean, if it's a few $1,000s, I get it. If it's 50, 100, $200,000, well, that's a big deal. But as we've discussed, it's not a matter of can you convince the lender to do or not do this. It really just comes down to what their guidelines are for what they report, what they don't report. But again, the simple analogy or the simple rule of thumb here is if it's going to happen in a foreclosure, it's going to happen in a short sale. If it's going to happen in a short sale, it's going to happen in a foreclosure. There are no two different
Mhm.
vehicles for that. All right, back to you guys.
Awesome.
All
Steve,
right.
remaining debt.
Yeah, the deficiency. So we get asked about this one a lot, and there are two perspectives to this. So, first, because short sales sell usually at a higher amount than foreclosures, the deficiency, the amount owed that has not been paid, is usually higher on a short sale. There's just less of a shortfall to forgive, and often a waiver can be negotiated as part of an approval. Not all the time. There's certain states, there's certain loans, there's certain whatever that a servicer, a bank, a lender must go after the deficiency. And if they do that, the same thing applies to a foreclosure. So, in both circumstances, all things equal, if there's a deficiency that they need to go after, they're going to go after it no matter what. And where the homeowner benefits from a short sale is that they're going to control the price. It's usually going to sell at a higher price. Therefore, their deficiency is lower. And if the deficiency is lower, you potentially have a higher chance of getting it waived. And your forgiveness of debt is lower. Whereas in the foreclosure, everything's just it's bigger, right? There's auction, you may have a lower price, it leaves a bigger shortfall. Any forget the deficiency with forgiveness of debt, how that does to your tax. So there's just all these pieces to a foreclosure that a homeowner doesn't control, whereas in the short sale they do.
Mhm. Agreed. Now, the credit impact. This is a big one because I know that there is a lot of misunderstanding on how this actually impacts people. On a short sale, it's a lot less severe and shorter than a foreclosure. On a short sale, okay, you're actually working with the bank to come to an agreement on a price to sell this property at its value, at this new appraised value. So the forgiveness per se is going to be, or the impact is going to be a lot less severe. Why? Because typically within about, I would say, 18 months, you can go ahead and buy another home if you qualify, right? If you have the right income, you've taken care of your credit, it won't impact you like a foreclosure. In a foreclosure is probably one of the worst, the top damaging occasion that can happen to any person, at least in America, as far as credit. Before even that, bankruptcy is even better than foreclosure. That's how bad it is. Because in a foreclosure, guys, you end up ruining your credit for up to 7 years. That's 7 years of some people can't even get a job. There's people that also like in the military, they need to preserve their credit at all costs. There's people that will lose their employment if their credit score goes down on a foreclosure. You get a foreclosure on your record, wow, that there is probably one of the worst aspects of the differences between a short sale and a foreclosure. Guys, don't for everything that you can do a short sale before a foreclosure. I've seen many cases of how folks are just down and out for 7+ years on their credit, not able to do a lot of things in their life. It just sets them back all the way, all the way.
Yep. So that leads right into buying their next home. So real estate
Right.
agents out there, real estate professionals, I'm hoping you're using a CRM in this day and age, but
Well,
you help somebody out of a bad situation. And if you go through the whole psychological process of this, if you were able to help that person get out of their head and not just let the bank take the house. I'm done with it. I've got to. And by the way, there are a lot of people that do that, and you won't convince them all. It sometimes tough divorce situations. I don't care what happens to the house. It can burn to the ground for all I care. And my credit's already ruined. So, none of these things, and that's gonna happen, folks. But for those folks that you did nurture and help through the process, if they're able to buy a house in the next 18 to 24 months, well, guess what, man? You better stay in touch with them. You better
mhm.
continue to be their advisor to keep them aware of properties that are coming up that you can do through automation, by the way, through your local MLS that may meet their needs when the time comes. And it's one of those things as well that they should be checking their credit periodically after they've gone through this because that magic day may come sooner than later when all of a sudden it starts bumping up. Or there may be loan types that they can participate in that may have shorter periods of time. So talk with your lender partners. Get out there and figure out solutions for everybody because that's what we do if you're going to be in this space. So, waiting to buy another home, put them in your tickler file in your CRM and don't forget about them because these folks have been through a lot. And man, would you be the hero of the day if you got them into a much more affordable house and they could tell all their friends and family and you could pick up more referrals. And that's how real estate works, ladies and gentlemen.
Now that, Steve, dignity and privacy.
Yeah, we'll wrap this up. We talked about this a little bit, but
Yep.
you know, short sales and foreclosures. At the end of the day, we all talked about it. The reason we all talked about it is it's that important, right? Is you leave on your own terms in the short sale. Short sale, just like we started with, right? A short sale just means that the property value is less than the total amounts owed. That's it. That's it. Other than that, it looks, feels, acts just like any other sale. So you're talking about from a sales perspective, right?
Mhm.
That you're just selling the property. Um, that's a big thing as compared to the public foreclosure, right? Juan brought it up, which I thought was great. It's part of the public documentation in courts and whatnot, and everybody knows you're in foreclosure. And I think back to years ago when family were, oh yeah, I got this letter of foreclosure for a family, but it's real, right? That's real.
Yeah.
So I think the dignity and privacy is a big precipice for this.
The only exception to that, it was actually kind of a badge of honor back in 2008 for investors. That's, oh yeah, I've had seven foreclosures. They kind of strutted around.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yep.
That was why we had the crash.
Yes.
But yeah, the better outcome I think is always the short sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Well, folks, if you are working on a short sale, a bankruptcy, or any deal with liens, judgments, or any complex title issues, Asset Resolution Advisor is here to help you folks. If you love this content and you want a copy of that talking point chart, comment chart down below, and we'll make sure to reach out to you and provide you with that chart. Please subscribe, follow, like, comment, send us any of your tough deals. We will turn those problems into closing. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Distressed Deals Decoded. We'll see you next week, guys. Take care.
See everybody.